Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners and Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July 29th, 2020. Round of the Puentes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we need some brave senators up in Washington, D.C., as Mitch McConnell said today. They don't feel like adding any more to the nation's debt by helping out the American citizens who pay their taxes, Charlton, and unfortunately have lost their employment due to COVID-19. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. Very proud of these people every day, Charlton, for the battle that they fight.
Yeah, they fight it every day, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV. You'll be looking at a still picture of Big C. It's all fair and love and war. Man, I love to pause, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline, Big C. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help, Big C. Why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we think about the great services that our veterans have served for this country, Charlton, is fighting battles off our land, Charlton, not like what the president has our veterans doing, Charlton, fighting American citizens. These veterans have come back home, Charlton, suffered many different types of injuries, mental and physical. And unfortunately, we lose some 22 a day to suicide, as well as we lose everyday citizens. But our veterans have served, Charlton, and they also deserve better treatment than what they've gotten in coming back home. When they seek out mental and financial help from our government, Charlton, it seems to have turned their back on our great veterans. And so we have to find a way. We give out the number all the time, Charlton, but you never know when someone is struggling, and that last moment when somebody is not there to assist them and keep them from going over the edge. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. We need more of a concerted effort from this entire country to help out our veterans.
And we will do our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. I really appreciate trying to give a help to our veterans. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And they say, hey, kid, when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple. Recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, and sports teams are doing it too. Let TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can hopefully get some help there. Big C, I remember when I was growing up, I love to eat meat. That probably don't surprise you. I know you're a meat eater too, Big C. But I used to always have an issue when this lady would come on TV and she would say, "Where's the beef? Where's the beef?" Big C, aren't people supposed to be grateful when they get food? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it all depends on where you are. Some people around the world don't eat beef at all.
Yeah.
You know, in times right now, a lot of Americans are going to be struggling, Charlton. This is the last week of government assisted unemployed benefits, Charlton, for Americans. And, you know, when you think about people not being able to pay rent, pay utilities, buy groceries for themselves and their children, Charlton, there's going to be a lot of people that will be grateful to have anything, and a lot of them are going to miss meals also.
Yeah, and so I was wondering, when the lady was saying, where's the beef? And you have Senator Mitch McConnell saying he doesn't care if you get beef at all. I mean, he couldn't care less if he even had the bun without the beef on it, Big C. So any advice to people, whether they're dealing with loved ones or even themselves, and especially checking on elderly people? A lot of the times that money that was needed, that was for elderly people that can't get out and hustle. They can't get out and do the Uber. They can't get out and do Food Mates or Postmates. They can't get out and go work at Amazon. What do you say to those people who are really, they're looking for something, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, everybody's not able to work regardless. When you think about people having delivery jobs, everyone doesn't own a car.
Yeah.
So many people rely on city and community transportation to get around. So you're not going to be able to do any type of deliveries if you don't have your own transportation. But as we look at our federal government and saying that American citizens should not be deserving of receiving unemployment benefits because of COVID-19 has closed down the country, they should go back to work. What if that place where you work is not able to open up, Charlton? You work in a restaurant, you work in the service industry, where you can't have sit-down dining or whatever in a hotel.
Yeah.
So as they sit there and look at citizens saying, well, they're lazy and they're benefiting from this, you think about the $600 a week that American citizens were receiving. That's equivalent to working a 40-hour-a-week job, making $15 an hour. You're not making money to go on vacation. You're not making money to extend your 401k plan, Charlton. You're making enough to get by, to make ends meet. You know, that's all you're doing. You don't have all this fiduciary money to go out and spend. But as our government, you know, elected officials are saying, that American citizens don't deserve any type of bailout or assistance. We would rather send that money to a foreign country, give them aid, spend billions of dollars, you know, for non-necessitated walls down on the southern border, Charlton.
Yeah.
To do what? To starve American citizens? All you got to do is look at Canada. They've locked American citizens out.
Yeah, they really have. And so when someone says, where's the beef? And I know we're in a world where people are saying we got to get sports back, and even POTUS got jealous that Dr. Fauci threw out the opening pitch at a game between the Yankees and the Phillies, and so he's now trying to go throw out a baseball pitch. But there are people, just like looking at the empty seats in the stadiums, there are a lot of people with empty bank accounts, BC, and there are empty refrigerators, and you see food banks lining up in California. The Golden State has food lines where people are in cars that stretch around the block just to get something to eat. And when you see that a lot of these people, you know, they're up in age, and to have Mitch McConnell, I don't understand his thinking, or even the thinking of POTUS, that they're going to tell grandparents around this country that you don't need to eat, that you've had too much to eat, and we can just print money with Fed Reserve, but we're not going to put food in your belly. Big C, your thoughts?
It's not even about the grandparents, Charlton. It's about the children. Well, when you think about the number of children that are homeless, not have a home, that are homeless. I was reading an article today about a little boy who was 7 years old in Berkeley. He lived in Strawberry Canyon. He and his mother live in a tent.
Yeah.
They've been in this tent over a year, Charlton, in Strawberry Canyon out there in Berkeley, California.
UC Berkeley, yeah.
You think about that. This kid is 7 years old now. And he's been living in a tent with his mother homeless for the past year, moving from spot to spot, Charlton. And so, you know, here's when they talk about protection against COVID-19,
yeah,
he can't live in sanitary conditions because they're living in a tent. They don't have any running water.
No.
You know, they stay warm the best that they can. They stay cool the best that they can. But they don't have sanitary conditions. They don't have bathrooms other than using public bathrooms.
Yeah.
So as we think about people getting this $600 a week, think about the number of people that are just homeless, that don't have any opportunity to get it at all, and the number of children that are not able to get it. And I think in the school district that he was in, it was like 824 kids in the school district that he was in there in Berkeley, California, that were homeless. And so when you think about that plight, here we are in America, and in one school district in California, you had 824 children that were homeless. that they relied on coming to school, Charlton, for their substance, for their breakfast and their lunch. And his mother was hustling on the street, begging on the corner, panhandling, for dinner that night, Charlton, to get enough for them to eat, to get basic necessities.
Yeah.
So as we think about Mitch McConnell thinking that $600 is making Americans wealthy and it's more money than they deserve or they ever made in their lives, this is what November 3rd means. You have to get rid of old, wretched people like that. Get rid of them because they don't care about American citizens. They're concerned about what type of deal that they're going to make that's going to help them line their pockets even more.
One of the saddest things, San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities, I think, anywhere in the world. And there's a beautiful tower downtown. They just completed it about 2 years ago. It's called Salesforce Tower. It's the tallest building in Northern California. It's over 1,000 feet in the sky, Big C. You can see all over Northern California being at the top of that thing. And it's not far from the Bay Bridge. Coming around to get on the Bay Bridge, which is Interstate 80, which goes from San Francisco to New York City. When you get on Interstate 80 on the Bay Bridge, you drive right by the Salesforce Tower, just a couple of blocks away, Big C. And getting onto that interstate with the most expensive real estate in Northern California and maybe parts of the whole country, you'll see people that are sleeping in boxes by the Bay Bridge. I didn't see that 3 years ago, but I see it all the time now, right at the foot of the most expensive real estate in Northern California. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's become commonplace around America, not just California, but every major city in America. And so when you think about the plight of the American citizens and you have our Senate telling people just go back to work, where when so many of these businesses have shut down, Charlton, because they're service industry and they cannot allow customers inside their business. And the senators are saying just go back to work. And the business is closed. Most of these businesses, when you think about when COVID-19 hit, I think about 17% of America's service industry businesses eventually ended up filing for bankruptcy. So when you think about 17% of an employment base in the United States is filed for bankruptcy, where do people go back to work at?
Yeah.
And they're saying that people have become lazy because they've gotten this money and they're not incentivized to go back to work. People want to work. Sitting at home is tough. It's mentally tough on anybody. You go into depression, but you go into even more depression living on the street, not having a home, not having a shelter to go to. We talk about athletes a lot. We talk about the multi-million-dollar contracts that they receive, and they can afford any luxury that they want. We know the team owners are worth billions of dollars, and they can afford anything that they want. We know our congressmen and senators, Charlton, they get a $200,000 salary from the government plus everything they can stuff in their pockets for making deals and putting in pork bellies and any type of bill that they pass through the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
But the layman American citizen, Charlton, that is not privileged, it is more than it is that are privileged. When we think about those who are forgotten, and I always go back to Jesse Jackson when he was running for president back in the 80s. We talk about the left out. Those are the ones that you don't see.
Yep.
The ones that are not in your neighborhood. You see them begging on street corners, hungry, homeless. Please help. Anything. God bless. But our government will not bless the people of the United States. You think about, we're the richest nation in the world.
Yeah.
We have the ability in this country to end homelessness. We have the ability in this country to end hunger. And you think about the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, has enough money by himself to end all that.
Yeah.
So imagine what the U.S. government has. If one man, Jeff Bezos, has enough money to end hunger and homelessness in the United States, he's the richest man in the United States. Think about the responsibility of the U.S. government and what they hold in their purse string, what they could end if they chose to.
Yeah, it's a choice, Big C. Where's the beef? Remember where the beef isn't on November 3rd, because a lot of people, it's like the needs of the many are supposed to outweigh the needs of the few. But when you have a beautiful country, the land of the free, the home of the brave, this is what I know people want to talk about sports too, Big C, but people will say, I can't believe that someone won't stand for the American flag, and those same people will watch Americans starve. They'll watch them starve to death, Big C. But if you stand for the flag, then they say you're a great American. But if you
Yeah,
let
but
people
those
starve to
don't
death,
even have the strength to stand for the flag, Charlton. When you think about your homeless, and as I was watching this young man and reading his story and his mother's story, you know, his mother even ended up hospitalized at one point. And here's a 7-year-old asking his mother, "Are you going to die? Am I going to be alone?"
I know.
You think about the mental pressure and anguish that was on this 7-year-old child as he's sitting in the hospital by his mother's bedside. And I was thankful for one thing about that, Charlton, is that CPS did not remove him away from his mother, because that's all each one of them had.
Yeah.
To take him off and put him into some foster care situation where no one cares about him. His mother she loved him dearly. She was doing the best that she can, but she's not getting any assistance from our American society. And there are many mothers out there that are in that situation that are not getting any assistance from our American society, where they can make it easy for them. You think about a lot of these hotels, Charlton, that are, you know, not occupied, a lot of apartment complexes, and people are going to be facing eviction notice come August 1st with this stimulus package that just ran out. Mitch McConnell doesn't give a damn how many more people becomes homeless.
No, there's something called a devil, and some people don't believe in the devil, but maybe they should, Big C. It's all fair in love and war. And I know even in the Bay Area, there's a lot of people saying, "Man, aren't you happy baseball's back? The Giants are playing, the A's are playing, well, the football's about to start up." Strawberry Canyon is over there where the University of Cal Berkeley football team is, and Pac-12 is deciding what they're going to do. But it's amazing how many people are just in a really bad spot, but no one cares because they're playing sports again. And without Big C Sports, you wouldn't even know about that. We want to pay homage to both. But again, thoughts and prayers are not enough. They got to vote November 3rd to get that knucklehead out of office, and his cronies too. And there's shame on Mitch McConnell, even though I bet he stands for the American flag, as he turned down a bill that would have fed millions of people who are in need. Big C, I want to run up to the city of Chicago, and I know in a world, you know, that Black Lives Matter should mean more than equality and liberty and justice for all. But there's a lot of people that have been able to fight for this country in every war the country's ever had. And when you talk about, well, we want to say Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group from the Oval Office, and it's not. And I remember the Black Panthers, not the movie Black Panther, but the Black Panthers that were out of the Bay Area, and they started a program to feed kids and preschool kids, but they were labeled a terrorist group. And all they were trying to do was feed people and fight for equality. Isn't it amazing how history repeats itself, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not that history repeats itself, Charlton. When you think of accomplishments and achievements and incentivizing that black people have done in this country, how it has always been labeled as something as an ulterior motive. When blacks have progressed in this country and tried to help and make things easier for everybody in society.
They're trying to feed people.
And they started the Head Start program, is what the Black Panthers started in the Bay Area around 68, 69.
Yeah.
And they were called a terrorist group because they looked out for children.
Yep.
They looked out for feeding the hungry and the needy in this country, Charlton, the things that our United States Senate is refusing to do.
Yeah.
So as you look at the plight of blacks, and you talked about equality in this country, every time blacks strive for equality, there's always another hurdle put out there in front of them by white mainstream society. And it shouldn't be that way. If this is the land of the free and the home of the brave and equality for everybody, Charlton, why is it that black people for 400 years have fought for equality and still have never achieved it?
And they're starving white people now, Big C. So I guess it's about the green. It's a green society now. They couldn't care less about color. It's about the money. Chicago, the Blackhawks, they banned the Native American hairdressers at home games. National Hockey League, Chicago Blackhawks, they said today that they're going to ban the hairdressers at home games as part of their pledge to honor the Native American community. And that's a nice gesture. But I mean, I know Native Americans would move to reservations, Big C. That's how much honor they got from this country. The move does come after conversations with Native American partners to establish new policies and initiatives. And I think it's a nice thing. I think even up in Canada, Edmonton, Alberta, The no headdresses policy began as soon as fans were allowed to back in Chicago's United Centers for games or events. That's a nice gesture, but it still comes in the face of people not being able to get $600 to help feed themselves in the United States. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, why don't they give them back some of their land? I mean, just to remove a headdress saying that you're going to pay homage to a culture. You're talking about sports teams making actions where our government is the one that can make the real incentives in the American society and make things occur, Charlton, that will actually benefit people. It's coming down to sports teams making a nominal gesture about a name, about an attire, that's supposed to appease all race relations in this country, where all it is, Charlton, is let me give you a potato chip out of this bag that I have.
Yeah. I mean, they can't do everything, but it's a gesture on a sports level. It has nothing to do with putting food in the belly of people, Big C. The moniker was chosen actually in 1926 and after World War I military Black Hawk Division. But at the same time, it was named after a squad leader, Big C. Everybody knows that there's something in names. The names are important, and a lot of times people think changing the name is going to make things a lot better. I do appreciate what the NHL has done as a hockey league, and different teams will do whatever they can. But that's only going to address the sports world. And I don't know what Big C Sports can do to make sure that everyone has food in the belly. I've never been hungry a day in my life, for the grace of God and parenting, Big C, and people that looked out for me over the years. I've never, ever, ever gone to bed hungry. Oftentimes I ate too much food, but for the grace of God that we had food growing up. And my heart bleeds for people that don't have that. There's so many things we want to be better in our lives. We can complain about anything. I've heard a friend of mine that came from Vietnam, and she said, you know what, Americans are so greedy. And I said, what do you mean? She said, people complain at a restaurant that their steak's not cooked well enough, or they don't have enough whatever, and sometimes they would just eat rice, and they had to make do with that, and we become so gluttonous, Big C, as we look for our sports teams to win games. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a country of gluttony, Charlton, and selfishness. America has been built on that. This is the reason why this is not an equality country. As you constantly speak about the words of the preamble and of the Constitution, you have to realize who that was written for. It wasn't written for everybody who lives in this country. It was written for the privileged who occupied the country at that time.
Well, I disagree with that because things change, but you got to see it. If you don't see it, it doesn't matter that we even have the preamble, Big C. Just like I want to bring up to you the racial equality and the statements that the NHL is trying to deal with. They can't appease everybody. They can't make sure that we have liberty and justice for all. But there are some people, like in the days of civil rights and segregation, there are people, Governor Wallace, segregation now, segregation forever. They wouldn't care less about what you or I think about equality and the Founding Fathers. But there are things that people are doing now in their own way. And I believe if you look at the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, this is NHL. We always mostly think about football and basketball, but the NHL, Big C, the players are going to line up shoulder to shoulder, and it's during the U.S. and the Canadian national anthems before the first exhibition game of the NHL's restarted season. And there's going to be members of the Boston Bruins. They plan to lock arms for the songs to promote racial equality. Now, I think that's a great thing. At the same time, maybe, and we'll probably hear it coming up in August, more of our sports brethren will, just like mainstream news, they will start talking about how to feed Americans. We know Mitch McConnell's a horrible person. He's like the devil. He really is. He looks like the devil. And for him to be willing to starve Americans, black, white, red, brown, yellow, it doesn't even compare. But racial equality in statements, that's at least a nice feel-good thing, but it doesn't put food in the belly. Big C, your thoughts?
It doesn't. Do you know what percentage is America still have segregation in its school system?
Oh, I believe it does. People are always fighting to have segregated schools.
Okay, well, 18% of America's education system, K through 12, is segregated. We're talking about the year 2020. 18% of our education system is segregated. You talk about Canada, and I know they're isolated in a bubble in Edmonton and in Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto, 2/3 of that city is built on immigrants. So when you talk about racial equality, Charlton, that's the mantra of that city.
Yeah.
Is 2/3 of that city are immigrants, people who came into Canada and made their stake in that city. So this city doesn't understand the racial divide as much as what we have here in the United States. They're accepting of other origins and races of people coming in, making a living and a way in their city as long as they're law-abiding.
Yeah.
And they don't fight against that. You know, you think about, you find a U.S. city that 2/3 of that city is made up of immigrants. We're talking about a city of millions of people, Charlton. Yeah. And so when you look at Canada, it is the model for what we should be doing. But you think about in the year 2020 in America, that 18% of our school system, K through 12, is segregated. So how can you have justice and equality for all if that still exists in 2020?
Yeah, and some people don't want equality for all. I mean, you don't have to read between the lines. Look at what Mitch McConnell just did. He said people can starve to death. He doesn't care. Didn't care at all. The league said that it would feature Black Lives Matter and other social justice issues that are during the opening ceremonies this weekend in Toronto and Edmonton, Alberta, and that's NHL executive Steve Mayer. He expects other demonstrations to happen too, Big C. And I think that's a great thing because they could say segregation now, segregation forever. But they're not like the knucklehead, the devil of a person, Governor Wallace, that's someone that Senator Mitch McConnell admired. So they're not like that. But I believe, and instead of saying just complain about something, I want to provide the solution as we blend sports and politics. I would love to focus on coming into this August, even going up to school when it starts. I want to focus on how Americans can focus on feeding kids. Like, no one should go to bed hungry. I think Bush had some type of slogan, no child left behind. But that hasn't come to fruition. And I don't know what we can do, but I know oftentimes when we talk about something, it comes to pass. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, you live out in the most wealthiest food providing state there is in the world, California. 7th largest economy in the world, the state of California. The largest agricultural belt in the world is in California.
Yeah.
So when you talk about people starving and you're living in a state, Charlton, that provides more agricultural substance than any state or any country in the world, California, and you have people that are hungry and homeless in that state, that means that the people of power don't give a damn. That's the bottom line. When you think about the amount of food that is thrown away that can feed people every day in California, nobody would be hungry, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, if they decided to give it away, and I know you talked about earlier that the food lines with people in their cars
around the block.
Yeah. You know, extend for miles at these handouts to give away food. That's the amount of food that's available. So you think about everybody doesn't have transportation who can't get in that food line and get to those where they're giving away the food. Those people are missed. So you have to have an outreach program, Charlton, where you could take it around throughout the community.
Yeah.
Think about the number of seniors who don't drive. But think about those people that are homeless, like the little boy and his mother in Strawberry Canyon, 7 years old. They didn't have a transportation. They both had bikes. And they moved all their belongings around on a trailer behind his mother's bike, their tent and all these other things. When they got pushed out of one spot, went to another. They don't have the ability to go find the food lines. And if they did, they don't have any place to store it.
Yeah.
That's the problem when you look at a lot of these people. So if you want to end hunger, you got to stop throwing away produce and other foods that are still good, Charlton, and give them to people and let them eat. Don't say that if they can't go to the store and afford it, then they don't deserve it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a process. It's a government issue. I know there's a lot of black farmers. I watched a program over the weekend and how black farmers can't even get USDA loans, but they're giving the white farmers that live in the same city, oftentimes just a block or two away, they would get loans so their farms could flourish. And a lot of the African-American farmers, they were just told, no, we're not going to give you a damn loan. Thanks for fighting the war, and thanks for standing for the American flag. We'll take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about sports and how to feed people. As the lady said on the TV commercial, where's the beef? We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. Really appreciate all the apps that are available on Big C Sports. And really, where is the beef? Senator Mitch McConnell, for anyone that votes for his constituency, you got to look at some of your neighbors are starving, and you got an old, wrinkled-up white man who's in a position of power because the devil puts people in places too, Big C. He's really a devil of a person. I felt even embarrassed that he spoke at John Lewis's ceremony. But again, there's a heaven and a hell from what people say biblically. I don't know if it's true or not, but there are people who act like devils to let people go to bed hungry when all you got to do is the stroke of a pen. The same way they're trying to use that same pen to take away voting rights, they can use that same pen to let people have food. Big C, NHL hockey is 90. You know, we talk about race a lot on our program because it's just real. NHL hockey is 97% white players, 3% ethnic minority players. However, they push for racial equality. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, you know, he does not say get the hell out of this country if you don't stand for the Canadian national anthem. I'm not saying that he is any better person than any other man on the planet. I know Canada has their own issues, but I think about how sports can galvanize people. And I know when we have Cancer Awareness Month, people wear pink. I would hope that Big C Sports can be the vanguard for getting people to talk about don't let any child go to bed hungry, and put that in front of an athlete that just signed a $100 million contract. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I want to go twofold on that. You know, you talked about those black farmers who can't get the same loans that the white farmers can right down the street. If you said justice and equality for all in America, and you just said and proved that it does not exist, because you have guys doing the same thing and only one race will achieve that. When you look at Canada and you look at the NHL, Charlton, it's a multicultural league. You're talking about a world league. When you think of the NHL, you have players from all over the globe that play that sport, Charlton. Everybody has to come into Canada, be quarantined, and play. And I think because of the diversity of the nationalities in the NHL, Charlton, it allows it to have a different plight than any other sport.
Yeah.
Is that you don't have the social issues of one country overriding it like what you have here in the U.S. You have white versus black. You may have teammates, but it's still white versus black in American society. Black society is always trying to obtain and achieve what white society has taken a toehold on, Charlton. And for 400 years, they've been fighting that battle. And I know you always say, you know, if you think that it's not going to change, you know, you have to look at what's been achieved. I mean, other than athletes making a great deal of money in society and being put on a pedestal and say, hey, look up at these guys who are paying a lot of money and let them be your saviors and your leaders. And pay attention to them and not what we're doing to you behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I do believe that everywhere you go, where progress is made, is only made by those who believe that it can. Racial inequality in Canada, it exists just like any other place in the world. Not as much of an issue as it is in the United States, the Underground Railroad in the 1800s. But Canada had slaves also for about 200 years. They were freed earlier than the United States Emancipation Proclamation. I believe slavery was ended in Canada right around 1834, I believe. I may be wrong about that, but I believe. But I want to ask you a question, because I've met many athletes that have talked about when they went to Canada. And I remember a guy who played at Notre Dame football, his name is Rocket Ismail, Big C, and he had made a statement to some people that when he went up to Canada, he was treated, maybe because he was an athlete, but I don't want to take his words out of context. I don't know if people treat you differently, but I know every time I've interacted with someone that was Canadian, not knowing whether or not I was involved with athletics, there seemed to be more of an egalitarian, more of an equality personality, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I've been to Canada on several occasions, Charlton, and I wasn't playing sports, but people address you as a person. That's how I was looked at in Canada. I'm walking down the street and somebody says hi, and I'm looking to think it's somebody behind me that they're speaking to.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't what I was accustomed to in America.
Yeah.
I think by nature, those people up there, Charlton, is they judge you as a person. They're not looking at the complexion of somebody's skin. Just like I said, the city of Toronto is 2/3 immigrants, and I believe it's the largest city in Canada.
Yes, it is.
So if you're the largest city in a country and 2/3 of your population are immigrants, how can you hold hostilities towards your fellow citizens in that city, Charlton? You have learned to be appeased by everybody and have appeasement towards everybody and be kind, because that's what makes you grow and be better as a culture.
Yeah.
And when you think about a country having socialized medicine, Charlton, that they're taking care of their citizens, we don't do that here. It's not about the crab in the bucket scenario from far as what I saw.
Yeah.
And, that's me. And so if Rocket Ismail felt that they put him on a pedestal because he was an athlete, we do that here in the U.S.
Yeah.
You see it. You tell me what person is not trying to get next to LeBron James when they see him walking up and down the street or in a public place, Charlton.
Yeah.
He has to have security around him to keep him away. And that's many other big, tall black athletes have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's just the athletic world. But when you're in a country and you're treated like a person and not a figurine, Charlton, that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I know that everybody has hope that they will do better and the next generation will do better. Equality is not something that's existed in this country for really forever since the inception. It's just about people having discussions and debates to make things better. I want to talk about a different form of equality, because when you have national health care, that would help a lot of people, black and white, yellow, brown, whatever people want to call it. I would love to see that. But I want to throw this to college football, because I know that sports can galvanize, even though it's not a panacea for everything. I look at college football, and I'm not being flippant when I say this. Notre Dame University, they're joining the ACC with football. I think they're already part of the basketball and other sports. So they're going to allow the football team to join the ACC and play a full schedule this season, based on today. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow when they start looking at more science. But when you think about why is Notre Dame not in a conference, it's really all about the money, the TV money, and they don't want to share. They get about $15 million a year for NBC Sports for home games. They're not going to. I wonder if they have to share some of that money with the ACC. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they actually have a $100 million a year contract with NBC Sports, Charlton, to broadcast exclusively with Notre Dame games. Notre Dame is joining the ACC. They were already part of the conference in all the other sports, and they had 5 games scheduled in football. Now they're going to play the full football schedule. Notre Dame lost 3 high-profile games that they had on the schedule for this year: the University of Wisconsin, USC, and the University of Stanford, Charlton, that were moved off of the schedule with this pandemic.
Yeah.
And so now Notre Dame will join the ACC for this season for the full schedule. They will split all of the NBC money with all 15 conference teams in the ACC for allowing them to play this full schedule, Charlton. So they're just not coming in getting a free pass, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're buying their way into this college football season.
Yeah, I believe it was back in 1991 that they signed a 5-year deal. It was $38 million at the time with NBC Sports, and they were just off of they were about 3 years removed from their 11th national championship with Lou Holtz when they beat West Virginia. But things are kind of going, I won't say downhill for Notre Dame. They just haven't won a national championship since then, but they have had some very good teams over the years. They will most likely dip in and dip out, Big C. They're not going to keep Touchdown Jesus. Oh, my goodness. Could you imagine Touchdown Jesus next to the Confederate flag states of the ACC, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is benefiting the ACC realistically when you look at it. They're bringing $100 million in revenue to the table for this upcoming season by sharing their NBC contract. It's going to give the conference even more national exposure, Charlton, because they're going to have a game every week on NBC, a primetime game.
Yeah.
So when you think about the exposure of the conference by bringing Notre Dame in, a marquee collegiate product also, Charlton, this really benefits the ACC more than it benefits Notre Dame.
Yeah, but I still want to, guys. You're down in the South. I don't, and I know that maybe I didn't really think about this too much until talking to you, and you're talking about the presence of. I used to watch the Dukes of Hazzard. They had the General Lee, and they had the Confederate, this flag on top of that orange car that they had. I didn't even think much about it at that time, but there's so much that goes on in our country, and people want to say, yeah, well, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Okay, well, here's Notre Dame's acid test. How do you really touch down Jesus, like Jesus Christ, and you have these Confederate flags and statues that POTUS wants to defend, and now NBC Sports is going to put money into these states that still fly the Confederate flag? Big C, how does that mix well? Your thoughts?
Well, you're missing the point, Charlton. Notre Dame was already a member of the ACC. They had 5 games on the slate already for the ACC conference this year. And all of their other collegiate sports, Charlton, participate full-time in the ACC. So all they did was add an extra 5 games to be a part of full-time of the ACC for this season. So they had already accepted that title.
That's interesting, and I didn't even think about it. Maybe NBC Sports hasn't thought about it, and I don't know if that bothers you or not, but we have a country that's going through so many things right now, and if you have NBC Sports broadcasting games and paying money, sharing the $100 million that they're giving Notre Dame with schools that still fly the Confederate flag,
But you're missing it, Charlton. It's already been under contract. NBC was already broadcasting these Notre Dame games, these 5 games that they had already had last season, that they had broadcast 5 games from the ACC. They were already on the slate to broadcast 5 games this year from the ACC. They just added another 5 games. So NBC was constantly aware. You think NBC is all of a sudden stopped broadcasting sports from the South, from states that have flown the Confederate flag? Hell no. They've been doing it forever. NBC, just like ABC, ESPN, and everybody else, have broadcasted from these states that have flown the Confederate flag, that have hailed the Confederate flag. Charlton, sports is sports, what they're looking at. They're not playing the political card. They're going in there, they're broadcasting the game. It's up to the network whether they want to pan that flag up on the screen. If they don't choose, the producer and the director chooses not to do that, Charlton, you don't see that flag. But you got to realize, when did any major sports corporation stop broadcasting games from the South? Whether you're in Alabama, you're in Tennessee, you're in Mississippi State, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. Tell me which one of these states that any broadcast company has felt that they should not be down broadcasting games because of this rebel flag affiliation that's been there for 200 years.
I think only NASCAR has had a come-to-Jesus moment, if that makes sense to you, how they've said they're going to ban it at the NASCAR races.
That's NASCAR. That's NASCAR. That's not the broadcast company. And I guarantee you will not be able to keep all of those flags and shirts and hats out of the stadium.
Yeah.
So we're talking broadcast companies. Tell me which one of these broadcast companies in your lifetime have felt that it was a disrespect or disgrace to go down to one of these southern states and broadcast a sporting event out of these states. And you even admitted yourself you were watching some show, Dukes of Hazzard, that had this car, General Lee, with the rebel flag across the hood.
Yep. I just wonder if they'll have some second thoughts about that. It's amazing when they're not as conscious that maybe they could have been and I could have been when I was younger. But it is a thought. Jesus is part of the SEC or the ACC now for football. I know they're already parts of other sports. But college football, when you think about it, how with COVID-19, if we even have a season, how will it affect the top NFL prospects? Will they start opting out of the season like a lot of the other NFL players have because they want to make sure their health is in line first? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as of today, we've had 30 top-flight NFL players that have opted out of the season for various reasons. And we've had players that have survived cancer, that have had heart murmurs, Charlton, that have had sickle cell, as well as other things, diabetes. NFL players have pulled out of this upcoming season at a rate of 30 already.
Yeah.
We've had some top-flight college athletes, Charlton, collegiate football players, said that they're not going to play. The leading rusher from the University of Illinois is not going to play. One of the top cornerbacks in the country, a potential first-round draft pick from West Virginia,
Yeah.
Not West Virginia, but Virginia Tech has opted out of the season. So you're going to see several dozen collegiate players opting out of the season, Charlton, because of health concerns. They don't want to get COVID and have it tear down their system and not be able to pass a physical or even lose draft stock when it comes around to the NFL draft. So it's going to affect the collegiate game just like it is the professional game. What I'm waiting on, Charlton, is a big-name quarterback on the collegiate or professional level that I'm not risking the season. That's when the ball will drop on everything, is that people say, whoa, we really have to evaluate this now.
Well, I think one of the president's men tested positive for COVID-19 before he got on Air Force One. That just came out. That happened today also at Big C. NFL football, you talked about some players that are opting out. New York Giants have a big-time lineman by the name of Nate Soldier, and he's opting out of playing for the Giants this year because of the COVID-19 situation. And being a big guy, making sure that his respiratory is going to be, healthy. He started every game for the Giants the past 2 seasons. He made his decision today on Twitter. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Nate Solder as well as other players that have opted out. Nate Solder's walking away from a $9 million contract this year.
Yeah.
Nate Solder signed the 3-year contract a couple of years ago with the Giants, made him the highest paid offensive lineman in football at the time, Charlton. He played 10 years also with the New England Patriots, won several Super Bowls. So what these players are looking at is that the money I have now is enough for me to survive for the rest of my life and my children also.
Yeah.
Is the extra $9 million going to be worth it if I catch COVID-19 and damage myself physically where I can't play anymore beyond this point and potentially also harm someone in my household?
Yeah, I think a lot of people respond differently. There's people who get it and they're fine. Others get it and they struggle. But I want to take you to, the Bounty Gate guy down in New Orleans, and Sean Payton. He wants more live football planned for preseason. The New Orleans Saints head coach, he prefers not to use the term training camp in how he describes trying to prepare his club for this pandemic-altered NFL season. But he wants them to do less social distancing, because when you start scrimmaging more, he wants to have more scrimmaging, Big C, in live practice scenarios, as opposed to just trying to keep people away from each other as much as possible. I know he may take some flack about wanting more scrimmages, but a game is a live scrimmage turned up to the 10th degree, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, you're going to be without preseason. You're trying to look at your free agents. You're trying to look at your rookies. And these evaluation processes are being taken away from all the teams in the NFL. Coaches always want to see their teams being competitive, and it's hard to prepare for a game without contact. Many coaches have understood that over the years. But this is a different time athletically and physically when you're looking at the players and the chances that you're taking with their bodies.
Yeah, they are taking chances. Even when you think about players that take chances, it's not just the big guys that are concerned. Kansas City Chiefs running back Damian Williams, he's opting out of the 2020 season. They just came off of a Super Bowl, and they have everything going for them. Patrick Mahomes just signed a lifetime contract. They drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU in the first round this year. So they have 2 other running backs from last season, Darrell Williams and Derwin Thompson, and free agent DeAndre Washington. But if they lose one player, I guess the teams are going to say it's just like an injury, Big C. They'll bring somebody else in. But even running backs are starting to say, you know what? My health is more important. I can opt out of the 2020 season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, even before Williams opted out, Charlton, Dr. Tardif, their right guard, opted out. And he just signed a new contract last year. He's walking away from $7.5 billion this year. He's a doctor up in Montreal, Canada, full-time, and that's his calling, he says, is to serve the public. And so he's opting out of the NFL season where he won't be protecting Patrick Mahomes, but he'll be protecting the citizens of Canada.
Yeah, he'll be doing a lot more good work in the country of Canada, Big C. I want to go to the Associated Press. 49ers, I was telling you, well, they're down in Santa Clara now. But getting on the Bay Bridge, leaving San Francisco, the biggest tower in Northern California, it stands over 1,000 feet high, Big C. It's a beautiful skyscraper. It even has it's kind of lit blue lighting up at the very top of it, Big C, kind of like the sky. But there's a lot of, going onto the Bay Bridge, you'll see a lot of people that are struggling in San Francisco. But John Lynch is not one of them, Big C. He just signed a new 5-year deal. The general manager, he agreed to it with the 49ers. That's going to keep him around through 2024. I don't know what he's done to make the 49ers better, but, I mean, he's going to get credit for it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, John Lynch took over a team that was very dismal. I think they had won 4 games. And all of a sudden, 2 years later, Charlton, he had that team at the Super Bowl. So when you talk about what he's done for a team, Charlton, he's done marvels for a team. He's made some tremendous acquisitions to get that team in. The team is young. It has a nucleus of players offensively and defensively that's under contract that'll be around for a long time. He's had some tremendous drafts since he's been in, but John Lynch is one of the bright stars in the GM office in the NFL. And you look at the turnaround that the 49ers have gone through in the last 2 years with him being at the helm, you want to keep him around.
Yeah, some people say Shanahan should get the credit. Why does Shanahan get the blame for the Super Bowl loss, and then Lynch gets this contract extension? How come he's not being blamed for the Super Bowl loss if he's such a good GM? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Shanahan was the guy calling the plays on the field, and if you look at the last 2 Super Bowls that Mike Shanahan has been in, he's been ahead by a total of 35 points, Charlton, in 2 Super Bowls and lost both of them. Calling the plays.
Yep. But at the same time, it was Shanahan that was calling plays, and he should be the one getting the credit. But, hey, Lynch can take the credit, too. He's the GM, and one guy answers to the other. It's all fair in love and war. I wish the 49ers the best, and they'll probably have a good season. If we have a season coming up, it's really hard to see if we're going to do that or not. I want to also look at going back to the world of college football. I know you talk about feeding people, and it's a shame what Senator Mitch McConnell did. I mean, he looks like the devil. That's my opinion, Big C, based on movies that I've seen. I have no personal experience with that. But he looks like the woman that played The Exorcist, if I can recall. Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma. You think about it, Lincoln Riley, he's going to earn an average of more than $7.5 million a year under a contract extension that lasts through 2025. He's not going to worry about being homeless. He couldn't care less as Senator Mitch McConnell and them good old boys passed that stimulus bill that would have helped feed hungry Americans. $7.5 million. Maybe Mitch McConnell thinks he's an average American, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Lincoln Riley and what he's done at the University of Oklahoma, Charlton, over the last 4 years in being the head coach, he has made the playoffs 4 consecutive years. He's also made it to the championship game, Charlton. So when you look at the pedigree that he's established at the University of Oklahoma, you don't want him to get out there on the open market and you have to play against him. So when you think about college football and the payment of head coaches in college football, it's an investment.
Yeah.
They're normally the highest paid people at the universities that they coach at.
Yeah.
And when you think of the pedigree at Oklahoma with some of the great coaches that they've had, Bud Wilkerson, Barry Switzer, now Lincoln Riley,
yeah,
the legacy that these men have created, the packed house that they have everywhere they go, Charlton, it's return on investment.
All that free money, and it is a return on investment, a lot of free money, Big C. I want to talk about money and free money. NBA basketball Hall of Famer, Charlotte Hornets owner Michael Jordan, he announced the $100 million pledge and how it's going to work. It's a really big deal, Big C. I know he committed a lot of money to help black communities. And maybe Senator Mitch McConnell thinks that everybody has $100 million to reach out and help. But it's amazing how we say don't worship athletes, and athletes are different. They're in a different universe, Big C. And maybe people like Mitch McConnell thinks that everybody can give out $100 million. Michael Jordan's taken a lot of flack over the years because a lot of his philanthropy has been in private. But he's the owner. He's a 6-time NBA champion, Michael Jordan, and started sharing some details on the $100 million pledge to the black community, how it's going to be advocated. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund, an educational fund, and formerly the Incarcerated Convicted Peoples and Families Movement will reach to receive about $1 million. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Michael Jordan, he's not an athlete. He's a businessman, just like any other businessman that have made pledges and endowments towards other organizations and causes, Charlton. And so that's how you got to look at it. I mean, we've seen this continuously. We saw Robert K. Smith last year when he did the endowment for Morehouse College in Atlanta. Same type of thing, Charlton. The injections of business is what makes a difference, not the injections from athletes. It's the injection from people who have clout and power beyond receiving a check from somebody.
Yeah, and it's the Black Voters Matter. I know that might upset Mitch McConnell and especially Donald Trump, when you say black voters matter, and they've already taken and closed a lot of voting booths, and not in white neighborhoods, but in predominant black communities in the South. It's a shame. But Michael Jordan's Black Votes Matter, which works to increase voter registration, which has been fought by a lot of your friends down in the South, and in trying to help with the turnout, get people to mail in, buy some stamps, mail in your ballot, and they get about $500,000 announced today, Big C. Jordan's doing what he can. He's only one person. But as Senator Mitch McConnell had the heart of what Jordan just did today, one guy's black and beautiful, and people look at him as an athlete, but he's really a philanthropist and businessman, a venture capitalist, an entrepreneur. And then one guy, Mitch McConnell, looks like the devil that played Exorcist, Big C. One guy's making sure that people starve to death, and the black man's making sure that people can vote. They're going to try to find something's wrong with the Black Vote Matters, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's always been something wrong with the Black Vote Matters. I mean, it's been fought by white society for a long, long time. It's even being fought harder here in COVID-19. When we think about resistance in American society, Charlton, it comes from the white part of society. It's constantly resisting black people from advancing. When we think about the advancement and equality in America, Charlton, if white society thought like black society, then we would have an equal society.
Yeah.
We would not have the despair that we have in society. But every day, you have white lawmakers stand up and say, that's not right. We want to resist these black people from having equal opportunity in this country.
Yeah, there is liberty and justice for all if you have that belief, but it has to be practiced. Not everybody practices the law. I do want to just...
When you talk about belief in liberty and justice for all, so what you're saying is that the white lawmakers of this country don't believe that.
No, you're not understanding what I said. You're not understanding what I just said.
The white lawmakers don't have that belief that should exist.
You're not understanding what I just said. Not every white lawmaker voted against people having the chance to eat. If you understand, in the House and in the Senate, there's white people too, Big C. It didn't have a unanimous vote to not feed people, Big C. But Jordan did state the Jordan family and their partners who share a commitment to address the historical inequalities that continues to plague black communities. And would you believe that some of Jordan's business partners are also white? It's not about black and white. It's about good versus evil, Big C. And if we don't see that, then we're slapping people in the face that are trying to be equal. And I think that we always got to do that. I also want to mention there's something that happened down in Texas. Of all places, it would happen in Texas. They got together, the Dodgers and the Astros, and they had a benches clearing brawl, black and white. It wasn't just the white guys that cleared the benches, Big C. It was black and white.
Who was throwing the pitches?
I'm saying that there were more than black. There was black and white involved.
Well, I'm asking you. I asked a simple question. What color was the pitcher that was throwing?
I asked you what color was the person that threw the fist, because that's more important than one person. You always want to take one person, and I think that's where you go wrong. If you look at with the group, both players got off the bench. Both teams got off the bench. And there's an 8-game suspension, for a guy who can't throw the ball straight. Maybe Kelly wasn't trying to throw it to somebody's head. Maybe he just had the ball. Maybe he saw Dr. Anthony Fauci throw a pitch and he tried to do the same thing. But Dusty Baker, he's too old for this garbage. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Kelly is a white pitcher, Charlton, that threw at the heads of 2 of the Houston Astros players. He got an 8-game suspension from his actions. But the person who started the negative action, who got an equal negative reaction, Charlton, was a white pitcher who instigated this situation. And so he should have gotten that 8-game suspension. You can always try to justify it by talking about the guy who responded back. But I'm talking about the guy who instigated the incident. If he did not instigate it, it would not have happened.
But what does his color have to do with doing something stupid to get fined? No black players ever thrown a pitch at somebody or been ejected from the game or hit somebody with a helmet?
This incident. We can go out and bring the whole world into this scenario about who has and who has not done something wrong. But we're talking about an incident. We're talking about a specific incident, not a broad spectrum of things. We're talking about a specific incident. Who got the 8-game suspension?
But what does his color have to do with his being suspended?
Because he knew that he had the autonomy to do what he did.
Obviously not.
Because his complexion allowed him to do it.
That's
Professional
negative.
athletes understand the level of culpability that they have based on their nationality. Being a professional athlete, know how the treatment is done differently for each culture, Charlton.
So,
it is. It's just like in society. You talked about earlier about the Senate and Mitch McConnell, and you said, yeah, there are black senators also. But it's the white Senate, Charlton. There's 3 black senators in the United States? 3. So that means we got 97 white senators in the United States. And you're going to tell me that those 97 white senators can't pass a bill to feed people?
Well, I just think if you just focus on somebody's skin color.
I'm focusing on facts.
Okay, well.
I mean, you got 97 white senators, Charlton, 3 black senators. 97. And you can't pass a bill with 97 white senators? 97. Those 3 black senators, whether they're there or not, are irrelevant when it comes to the vote. But what I'm saying, we got 97 white senators in America. We got 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. And in those 97 white senators, Charlton, they cannot pass a bill to help the American people.
Yeah, well, I still think it's about the heart and not the skin color. There's a lot of people of all colors that do a lot of good, too.
The heart is the same color in every individual. If you did a heart transplant, took a black person's heart, put it inside that white person, Charlton, he's still white when you look at it. You don't recognize that heart. Everybody's heart is the same color. Everybody's blood is the same color. Most people have the same blood type. But what I'm saying is a point-specific scenario. You got 97 white senators in America. 97. And they can't pass a bill when you talk about justice and equality for all?
Well, that appears to be the case. I still think we're going to take a unity of people to get together, and not just black and white, but everybody has their own opinion. Final story for today's show, and this guy happened to be white, so that might make you happy. Major League Baseball, Philadelphia Phillies have a staffer who tests positive for COVID-19. He's white, Big C. Is that a bad thing? Your thoughts are a good thing?
Well, Charlton, as long as he's socially distanced and quarantined from everybody else, that means he's looking out for the good of the entire organization. But we haven't seen that to be self-evident yet, Charlton, that people are looking out for the good of everybody else, because everybody is still breaking this social distancing rule that was put out in this 113-page manifest by Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred stood up on television the other day, said he didn't have an excuse or an explanation for what's going on. He doesn't have a plan B. You know, he has plan A, but he doesn't have a plan B for whatever's occurring in Major League Baseball. And for the next team that breaks out with at least 10 players, Charlton, with COVID-19, he still has his hands tied, not knowing what to do.
Well, it's about the money, Big C, and he's going to get that money whether they play or not. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, the NBA tips off tomorrow night, Charlton, for their playoff run down in Orlando in the bubble. Commissioner Silver was on television stating today that he does not have a plan if COVID breaks out again. They had a plan when the season shut down when Rudy Gobert tested positive, but there's no plan right now if they test positive for COVID-19 in the bubble. Want to thank those frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. I know that you guys work tirelessly every day trying to keep America safe and alive, and I thank you.
And we thank you all. We thank the black workers and the white workers. Big C is about people, not their color. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday at 5 or 6 p.m. on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.